All right, so spirals and cycles. Take a moment to think about what you think you know about progress. Then throw it out. We're going to talk about spirals and cycles. We're not talking about progress in a line. We're talking about progress that circles in on itself. So let me start you off with a little example. We have this term called biomimicry that we use a lot in the design field. And what biomimicry is looking at what we already have in nature, the problems that have been solved for, and mimicking them in our world, using them as the solutions for our industrial problems. So here's an example. These are burdock burrs. They're pretty terrible when you're going for a walk. They stick to your clothes. They stick to your pets. No one likes them, but they have these little hooks that you can probably see there. And those hooks were the inspiration for Velcro, which everyone loves and uses all the time. So that was a solution that existed in the world already. No one had to design anything new, really. They just had to adapt it. Here's another example, shark skin. When people were looking at new ways to design swimsuits for top-class swimmers, for the example, the Olympics, they looked at shark skin and found ways to make it more aerodynamic. We can also look at photovoltaics, solar panels, the way we've used, the way plants use photosynthesis. There's lots of examples, but the point is that what we have is already there. We don't need to develop something new. We don't need to take a step forward. We take a step to the side. We look at what's already there. Now we're going to look at the field of healthcare and nutrition. So they have a term that they use with the word deviance. So normally when we think of deviance, we think of something negative. We think of people who are deviants. We think that they go against the grain. They're causing trouble. In the health field, they have something called positive deviance. Now, positive deviance is someone who is going against the grain, but they're doing so in a way that is useful, in the same way that biomimicry is useful. It's been solving a problem that's already there. So in Vietnam in the 1990s, this is a rather famous example, what they did was they went in after a famine, right? You had children who were severely malnourished, and the researchers took a different approach to the normal approach of coming in with food packets, vitamin supplements. What they did is they looked at the community. They said, which children are already well-nourished, and what are they doing differently? And what they found was that the parents of these children were feeding them small crabs and shrimps, which was something that was culturally considered inappropriate to feed to children. So instead of having to bring in expensive teams of people, teach this community all sorts of things, all they did was they said to the parents of these children, we want you to come to a community meeting, talk to the rest of the community, and tell them what you do. Break down those assumptions. You already have everything you need to fix your community. So these two things, biomimicry, positive deviance, they're just examples of sideways steps. Now, my work the last few months is about measuring progress in society. Now, the main way that we do this, in the developed world especially, and in developing countries, is by looking at gross domestic product, at GDP. So what we're really measuring is how much a country can produce over a certain period of time, and we say that's a great thing. You know, we make more stuff, surely that's progress. Surely that's progress. But it was when it was developed. So it was developed before World War II in the 1930s, and then actually implemented in 1944, I believe, to actually measure that because it was very important at that point in time that for the war effort and for recovery, we produced as much as possible. So over the last 50 years since then, we've ended up with something like this for GDP. It goes up a few percent every year. Sometimes there's dips, but on the whole, it's a very nice sort of rising graph. But then when we take other aspects of life, the things that we think about when we think about well-being, it doesn't really work out that way. So we already talked a little bit about how wealth is not spread equally. Inequality is a huge problem. Gross domestic product doesn't care about wealth. As long as someone's earning more, making more, it looks great. It looks rosy. Now, what you can do is come up with a bunch of alternative indexes or indices of other measurements. So, for example, there's one called genuine progress indicators. And what they do is they add and subtract from GDP based on a few different measures. So they'll take environmental degradation, they'll take education, crime, play with the numbers a little bit, and when they add all those up, what you come out with is something more like that over the last 50 years, which is not progress. There's nothing happening there. So this is, again, you're not adding new things to get progress. What you need to do is look at what you already have, begin to optimize it, make it more efficient, and that can lead to some really interesting things. So just some examples of these alternative indexes. In Bhutan, they have something called gross national happiness, and that's what they focus on, which is just fantastic, I think. They have all sorts of different measurements that go in there. They've been doing that for a few years. It's actually a constitutional protection that the government has to maximize happiness for their country. It's wonderful. Here in the UK, currently, the Cabinet Office and the Office for National Statistics are both working together. What they're doing is adding in questions about happiness and life satisfaction into the annual population survey and other data sets so that they can actually measure where people are happiest and what sort of things are making them happy. There's a community in the US, in Massachusetts, a city called Somerville, and what they did was they said, let's take this national project that all these countries are taking and let's apply it to our particular community. Let's see how happiness is spread out amongst the different residents, how life satisfaction is spread out. And they found something really interesting. They found that the community with the highest happiness, that neighborhood, it didn't fit any of the things they were looking for. It didn't have any green space nearby. They were right next to, or even under, I believe, a freeway. I don't think crime was very nice in their neighborhood. They had a lot of it. But what they did have was a lot of social cohesion. They had all sorts of groups, meetings, social events, and that seemed to be the defining factor for them. So the city, rather admirably, looked at what they did. And normally, as a city, you provide physical resources. You improve the infrastructure. You improve all sorts of things. What you don't normally do, which is what they now do, is have part of your budget dedicated towards putting on community events, mixers, all sorts of different ways of connecting other neighborhoods to make them as happy as their best case neighborhood. Really interesting. So that's sort of the bigger picture. I want to take it just for a minute to a smaller case, personal happiness. So there's this wonderful application called Mappiness from the London School of Economics. And I was using it for, I don't know, a few months. And these are the results that I came up with and have begun to use to sort of change the way I look at my own life. So first of all, this is what it looks like for me during the week. Perhaps unsurprisingly, I have a dip on Wednesday, right? Oh my God, this week is so long. Saturday it goes down again. That might be a hangover effect, I'm not sure. But it's not that surprising. If we go on, though, this isn't that surprising for most of us. We love being outdoors. No one likes commuting. You're beginning to see a bit of a pattern, but one of the really interesting things is that you don't really think about it in your daily life, that you don't have those magnitudes graphed out for you, and so you can't actually optimize the way that you do things. Here's another one. Home, elsewhere, work. I was happiest at work during this time period. I'm not going to tell you where I worked, but I was very happy at the time. Again, those seem very normal, don't they? But something that I've always loved is reading. So last year I read almost a book every week, and yet reading for me is between administration and queuing. So something is clearly wrong here. I only went walking and hiking once during that time period, and it was the top of my list. So since then, I've really been looking at how I live my life, what sort of activities make me happy, and it's not about earning more money, it's not about producing more, it's about going sideways, optimizing, playing with what you already have. Okay, so what are we really talking about here? We're talking about challenging your assumptions. You think that progress needs to go one way and be a straight line, that your career needs to go in steps, right? You need to build up to things. I don't think that's true. I think what you need to do is look at what's already around you and play with it. During the Apollo 13 mission, they had all sorts of troubles, but if they had stopped and said, oh my, that's too bad, I guess we'll do better on the next one, all the astronauts would have died. Instead, they took what they had on this plane, they took what they had on the spaceship, stripped it all back to the basic functions of all these assorted things they had on the spaceship, fit them together in a new way, and were able to get everyone home safely. So, you think of this line, get rid of it. You want to avoid the temptations of linear development, revisit what you already have, adapt it, grow it. You have the solutions you need already in front of you. Thank you.